Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I would love to try to drill a little bit deeper into what compassion fatigue and burnout feel like for us. So let's talk about the signs and symptoms of compassion fatigue. Since this is a complex, multifactorial disorder, the symptoms that we experience can also be very complex, and they can hit us in a lot of different ways. They can hit us physically, they can hit us mentally, they can hit us emotionally. And because we get hit in so many different directions by burnout and compassion fatigue, we're also going to see this show up in our behaviors, the way we treat other people, and therefore it's going to also affect our relationships. So here are all the signs and symptoms of compassion fatigue in those different areas. Won't go through all of these in detail, but I'd love to get your reaction to some of the things that you're seeing on here, like brain fog, poor memory, apathy over an emotions, getting a sense of numbness or helplessness, feeling irritable down in the behaviors, getting more impatient, having sleep problems, like you get insomnia. You don't usually get insomnia. What rings true here for you guys? Are you experiencing any of these things? Have you noticed some of your colleagues experiencing some of these things? Yeah, thank you all for joining this discussion and sharing your thoughts in the chat. I really appreciate that. It's important to bear in mind that our signs and symptoms can kind of get worse over time as well. So the signs and symptoms that you have of either burnout or compassion fatigue, and we now know that they're very much interrelated, can start out very mild, like the things that you see on the left-hand side of the screen, and then they can progress in severity as they increase in either intensity or duration. Like we just have to handle things for months on end. So then our symptoms can get worse over time until they progress to the red phase that you see on the right-hand side of the screen. So at their most dangerous, we're talking about serious physical issues that can put us at higher risk for things like heart attacks and stroke, and serious emotional distress as well. People can start experiencing symptoms of clinical anxiety, clinical depression, PTSD, and so on. And our thoughts can become so distorted near the very worst end of the spectrum that we are ultimately at higher suicide. So I won't show you the data in this presentation, but there's a lot of data out there to show that caregiver professions, healthcare professionals, and also veterinarians, which I see someone has joined us who's a veterinarian. In some of these caregiving professions, they are at higher risk for mental distress, suicidal thoughts, and suicidal behaviors compared to the general population. Now let's talk about how compassion fatigue and burnout shows up at work. This data, like the other data, the symptom data that I showed you before, this comes from Charles Bigley. He is a traumatologist. He's the founder of a traumatology institute at Tulane University. And he wrote a manual on compassion fatigue, where he outlines the impact of compassion fatigue at work. And he talks about how compassion fatigue can show up in many different ways, in work performance issues, behaviors, in employee morale, of course, and also in work relationships. So again, I'd love to get your thoughts here, your reaction to this data. What impact have you seen of compassion fatigue in your workplace? Have you or your team members experienced some of these issues?